Sup Shredders! My name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to SP Reacts, where today we got ourselves 3 tracks from an act named Sunny Kingdom Music, the first of these titled You Live in Me rock version. And if we switch over to here, we got ourselves a track on the screen on YouTube. We have the art here, and we're going to listen through it, as well as 2 other songs from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go, You Live in Me rock version. What do we got?
You live in me. You live in me.
Almost a little bit heavier than the usual rock I'm used to, eh?
I used to chase every voice that called my name, trying to find myself in all the wrong places again. But you pulled me closer, showed me who I really am. Now every heartbeat reminds me I'm held in your hands. I'm not my own, you made me new. Every breath is yours, every step with you. You lit a fire deep inside my soul. Now I finally know your spirit lives in me. I'm a temple of your love. You made me holy, set me apart from above. I'm walking in your purpose. I'm covered in your light. My body is your temple, and you make it come alive. You live in me. I don't need the world to tell me who I should be. Your truth is louder than the lies that follow me. You gave me freedom, now I rise in victory. My whole life is worship when your spirit's guiding me. My heart feels heavy.
Yeah, it's nice to have that adjustment there of the vocals and the intensity of music.
Do you not know your body's a temple of the Holy Spirit? Your word lifts me higher. Your spirit lives in me. I'm a temple of your love. You made me holy, set me apart from above. I'm walking in your purpose. I'm covered in your light. My body is your temple, and you make it come alive. You
Interesting melodic passing there.
Take my hands, take my heart, use it all, set me apart. Every breath, every part, you're the light in the dark. Take my hands, take my heart, use it all, set me apart. I'm yours Your spirit lives in me. I'm a temple of your love. You made me holy, set me apart from above. I'm walking in your purpose. I'm covered in your light. My body is your temple, and you make it come alive. You live in me.
I mean, it works functionally as a track. Yeah, no, it's pleasant to listen to, eh?
You live in me.
Yeah, I mean, like the vocal production is the main focal point here. I think they're trying to sort of not go for too many other sort of specific lead instruments. So I think that works here. It's fine across 5 minutes because in these post-track sections, I'm going to go through like lyrics and vocals all the way through studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique with an overall comment at the end on these tracks, and then my final general thoughts. My listeners suspect it, but before we go any further, what do we think You Live in Me, this track, is about? I think this song, it's got a description down here. Or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God, and you are not your own? So there's definitely a religious connotation here. I think a lot of this music is in that direction, if I understand correctly, from Sunny Kingdom music, and I don't mind that. I think that if you, again, have a passion for that kind of thing, and there is going to be an audience that this will resonate with. I think that this one is more about allowing yourself to kind of give in to what is present inside of you. And it's effectively like a celebration of that, so to speak. You know, I'm covered in your light there. We're kind of relishing within that, you know. There are some trials and tribulations that we're going through, but nonetheless grateful that we've got that support there, or that connection there, I suppose. I think that the vocal performance across the board is quite good. We have a lot of different interesting vocal melodies and some harmonies as well in parts. With the vocals, the prominent vocal and the main lead of the track. We're comfortable in our head and chest voice. There's a lot of interesting tails, a bit of vibrato there. There's some sung notes and melodies as well there. And we don't just tell the story there. We allow ourselves to be a part of the ether, the surrounding elements, which I appreciate within the mix. Lots of changes of cadence rhythmically as well, the words and how they come through, and we adjust our expression as well to suit the mood of the music around us. I think all of the boxes are ticked effectively in that regard. The track at 4 minutes 57 has a mixture of different verses and choruses, and so I think so. There's an interlude as well there, and a few other instrumental components there, and other bits. And it's nice to have an dedicated intro and outro to it as well. And with the kind of the rise of the pads at the start, the strings there with the keys coming in sort of tranquil on the right side, before you have the heaviness of the acoustic drums, the guitars as well. Although they take a while to come in, to be fair. The vocals come in around the about the 10-second mark there, and they introduce themselves, so they're very familiar with the fundamental components of the piece. There's this kind of like misty feel to when the guitarists come in around the 30-second, 40-second mark there, and it sounds a lot heavier in parts. The stereo field, the frequency spectrum, should I say, is better filled out. I think the strings that you have, some of the notes that they highlight there, add a major tonality to the piece there, even though the song itself is in a minor key. I think to sort of insinuate that even though we're going through some difficulties, there is a happier ending outside of it. Like, we're not completely down and out about the situation. And it's nice to have the drums be such a focal point of the piece in regard to the fact that they are the main percussive layer there. They work with their kicks and snares and hi-hats and cymbal patterns, some crashes there. We're comfortable with our quarters, eighths and sixteenths there. We play some on beats and syncopated. But we are fundamentally supportive, I suppose, at the same time when we are there. It's not like we're trying to do massive drum solos or anything like that. Around that 3:30 mark, for example, though, we do adjust things with more of a clap and sort of minimalist feel to the kit to, I think, allow for a quote-unquote kind of like cinematic feel to the piece. Like we're coming into something else, something bigger than ourselves. I suppose at the same time, though, like there's such a sort of common intensity to the piece there because of the compression and stuff like that, that a lot of the piece sounds the same, which isn't necessarily a fair comment, because I know there's adjustments with the way that the guitars are presented with some of the arpeggios and cleaner elements at the beginning, with the power chords differentiating within those chorus parts as well, to just kind of add different layers of power behind the piece. Kind of weird, it's a song where it sounds like there's a lot more going on than there actually is. Again, there's a relatively minimalist setup with the piano there, where we play different highlights of keys and octaves and fifths and stuff like that. We maybe have a parallel major in the third chord of the loop as well, which I think is kind of cool, if that is the case, for not misinterpreting it there. That's something that's a little bit unconventional thematically. I think it's cool to play around with that. That again insinuates that things aren't as dark as they seem. You could have gone for the minor there, the diatonic, and like it just would have been a bit dreary sounding. So I'm glad that there was that balance there. I don't think that would have necessarily made sense with the lyrics. And we add certain higher end elements as we go through the piece and generally staircase it, but I think you basically have a lot of what you need within the first minutes to figure out what's going on for the rest of the 5. Or the fourth, should I say. Yeah, honestly, like, it's a functional song there that doesn't go outside the boundaries too much there. I think it's trying to be more accessible for an audience that might not be as familiar or comfortable with traditional metal layers there. I know it's the rock version, but you've got some heaviness there that it does remind me of some of the more sort of symphonic bands from the late metal scene, like the mid to late 2000s. Kind of like an Evanescence-y theme, like a tiny bit like that, I suppose. Studio recording, mixing and mastering, I think across the board is pretty good. I kind of wish the guitars were a bit wider in the mix when they came in. I think we might have had the same thing copied on left and right, so it sounded like the guitars are phasing into the center. So, I mean, aside from that, though, the drums, bass, the keys, the strings there, which I didn't really talk about the strings too much there. They were playing sort of like held notes or chords or harmonies there, and occasionally staccatoing or accenting certain notes within the triads to for effect. But yeah, honestly, like, it's nice and loud, bass compressor limiting his handle, a bit of pumping from the drum kit there. And the vocals, regardless of whatever form they're interpreted as, they are resonant within the mix. So it's good. It's good. But we've got I Can Do All Things, the rock version. More strings. And orchestral drums.
I was feeling low, but he lifted me higher. He turned all my weakness into Holy Spirit fire. I was walking in the shadows, trying to fight on my own, until Christ stepped in and said,
It's really interesting that we add these kind of poppy layers into the rock there. I know that's maybe a controversial take, but
He is breaking the chains, every storm that rages, He is calming the rain. I am standing on the word, I am built on the rock. When the enemy comes knocking, I do not even unlock. Now my hands are steady, my heart is set. He's been faithful, He's not done yet. Every fear must bow down, every wall give way. When I call on Jesus, He makes a way. I can do all things because Christ gives me strength. Every mountain in my way falls beneath my feet. I am not moved by my own power. The victory belongs to Him. Philippians 4:13. That is the key. I can do all things because Christ.
I like the radio filter on the vocals. That's an interesting production choice.
When I felt so weak, but His voice cut through the darkness, saying, "Child, I speak." He said, "Lean on me, I will carry every burden you hold." Now I walk in authority, confident and bold. I am not stressing over trials, He has already won. I am not folding under pressure, my strength comes from the sun. Every setback becomes a setup for the glory He brings. I am a warrior in the spirit, I can do all things. Now my hands are steady, my heart is set. He's been faithful, He's not done yet. Every fear must bow down, every wall give way. When I call on Jesus, He makes a way. I can do all things because Christ gives me strength. Every mountain in my way falls beneath my feet.
I mean, I think it makes sense that the vocals are coming up to meet the choir.
The victory belongs to Him. Philippians 4:13. That is the key. I can do all things because Christ.
A bit of sharpness in the high end here that I'm not necessarily comfortable with.
Not by might, not by me, by the King who reigns in me. Through Christ I rise, through Christ I stand. His strength is alive in my hand. I can do all things because Christ gives me strength. Every mountain in my way.
Sorry to interrupt. I feel like when we belt like that, it's quite, because a lot of things are quite in the center of the stereo field, left and right sides of the headphones, right? So it's just quite a lot to take in when you've got those three different layers on and so close to the center.
Falls beneath my feet. I am not moved by my own power. The victory belongs to
mean, like that last little bit with that reverb there, the way it kind of fills the room like that is kind of neat. There are some decisions that are made here production-wise that I agree with. Because this track, I Can Do All Things, the rock version from Sonic Kingdom Music, I understand what the track is about. I'm going to be a little bit more forthright than maybe I was with the prior track there, where with You Live in Me, it's more about discussing their relationship with God and how they're kind of a vessel for that, if I'm not mistaken. Philippians 4:13, apparently, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, effectively is trying to insinuate that they can do things because of God. Whether that is that they are able to function through God or they're able to achieve things beyond what they could have done alone with God, I'm not quite sure. Either way, it's not, irrespective of that. I think, again, it's another one of those stories where, if you roll with that theologically, then you're going to vibe with that, and I think that's cool. I think that the thing with the vocals in this track is I appreciate what we're trying to do with the choir. It's just that when we belt quite a lot of the track, it doesn't necessarily hit as hard as per, in contrast to if we only belted occasionally. The belting started coming in, the louder vocals started coming in around the halfway point, if I'm not mistaken. And it was just a little bit harsh sounding. And that kind of push is something that is permissible, arguably, when we've had a bit of time to sort of build up to that, which, to be fair, if this was a shorter track and we'd had the first 2 minutes kind of working up in terms of intensity there, like we'd come to a realization that really we could only do these things, then it makes sense that we'd call out. It's just that when we have a 4:16 track here and we're kind of calling out at that similar volume or frequency with again, staircasing, additional layers provided there, it's just more that you get used to that intensity around the halfway point and then it just kind of stays there and it's just slightly louder through different things. Nonetheless, I think that we had a lot of interesting sort of note choices. We had some sort of melodic rapping stuff going on there in some of the verses, lots of different interesting vocal rhythms. I like the fact that we stayed within a diatonic and we didn't necessarily go chromatic, because I feel like with that kind of chord progression, if you do any risky sort of decisions there, it's going to kind of potentially fly in the face of what makes sense for that context. And so ultimately, I just think, again, the choir on the sides, there was a nice additional pull. It's just the vocals in the center with the layering and the kind of held note at the end there with how it ties in. It's just, I kind of prefer the quieter bits there, the more sort of tender elements. It's a style of music where, like, I feel like it's accessible to a wider audience because of the flexibility in terms of what genre it could possibly be. At 4:16, you have different verses and you have different sort of choruses and hooks and little interlude sections there. There's no particular points where you're necessarily celebrating the instrumental backing behind it. You have one of those pads like we had in the start of the previous track, and we have, to be fair, there are other strings with the triplet flow, kind of like you're starting a soundtrack on a Transformers movie or something like that, and I dig that. I think that sets an interesting precedent there. It's something you had that was different to the prior song, so you feel like you're going in a different direction. That kind of minor leaning is a different sort of like movement to the main sort of prominent chord progression we have throughout the vast majority of the piece there. That's far more sort of poppy and it's very difficult to muck that kind of one up. Not only is that chord progression within the sort of major or minor key, the major key, it can also switch to the major key really neatly. I just think it's nice how it pops into that sort of minor at the end with the strings there, almost like it's minor key oriented thematically. I'm just not sure why it is, because I feel like we're happy for this. Is it more that it would be kind of cheesy sounding if we had this in a major key, or is it that we're feeling like the rock needs to be minor? But I think the kind of swing groove on the drums with some of the cymbal hits as well as what you have with the orchestral patterns and certain elements there provides a more sort of like diverse range of tonalities there, with the strings continuing to resonate behind some of the choir vocals and different parts, and with some synths as well, some synths and basses there, not only ruminating around the root notes but also echoing in rhythms both with and against, or maybe you can call it responding with the vocals and certain elements there. Nice use of some articulations as well. It's not just playing the notes or writing the song, but it's also having those kind of like rough sort of like drum techniques rolling between sections is cool. I think it was kind of neat to have the track go down at the end with the intensity there with the vocals over top of those strings. It was cool to sort of like have a different interpretation of that, almost like the strings of the person coming to the realization of this and then at the end have come to peace with it. And again, like there's lots of power behind it. It's not like it's lacking in a sense of purpose there. Around 2:20, when you have that big sort of like crescendo with the machine gunish kind of kicks and floor toms there, and the singer kind of pulling up like that. There's stuff in here to appreciate that does drive home the feeling, the emphasis I want to place on this environment there and now. It's just more that we kind of get to the tippy top of the mountain halfway through and not really sure how to go up further. Nonetheless, I think that again, thematically, the minor leaning here, even though I'm not necessarily sure if it completely fits with this, it's more about the fire that comes with the purpose that comes with knowing that you can achieve more, do more through what's sort of been provided for you and with the partnership that you have. And just in terms of studio recording, mixing, and mastering, while again I would have liked the vocals to have been a bit more wide in the mix, I do typically feel that things are quite well leveled. There was a bit of compression in this track, which kind of made it sound a bit heavier, nice and loud. And I think that the way that there's a nice sort of like relationship between the vocals and the choir, the main vox and the choir, that is, aside from the panning, is quite prevalent. It's nice to hear them work together. I think the use of contemporary elements like some of the synths, the pads or the basses and stuff like that with the strings and drums was a cool sort of like fusion of parts. We got Love That Never Ends, track number 3.
I was running in the shadows, trying to find a place to breathe. Every heartbeat felt so hollow till your love came down for me. You stepped into
Very different track to the previous two.
lit a fire in my chest. I didn't earn it, didn't deserve it, but you called me loved and blessed. And I feel you in the quiet, in the breaking of the night, in the moments I feel empty. You remind me I'm alright. For God so loved the world that He gave His only Son, so whoever would believe would find a life that's never done. John 3:16, yeah, that love keeps holding me. It's the promise that I cling, love that never ends. I've been walking through the questions, trying to trust what I can't see, but your mercy keeps on reaching, pulling me back patiently. You take the fear I carry, turn it into something new. Every tear becomes a story of the way you're pulling through. And I feel you in the quiet, in the breaking of the night, in the moments I feel empty. You remind me I'm alright. For God so loved the world that He gave His only Son.
I'd say this is probably my favorite track out of the 3 today.
Would believe would find a life that's never done. John 3:16, yeah, that love keeps holding.
I like how the bass kind of, there's this constant call and responses there between some of the bass, for example, and the vocals.
Love that never ends.
Solid low into it.
Never fails, love that never fades, love that breaks the chains and lifts me from the grave, love that never ends, love that never bends, love that calls me home again and again. For God so loved the world that He gave His only Son, so whoever would believe would find life that's never done. John 3:16, yeah, that love
Nice
keeps
adjustment of the hook there.
holding me. It's the promise that I cling, love that never ends.
And that was Love That Never Ends, track number 3. I'm just going straight into it. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. I think this track again, literally, he says he's alright, you know. He feels fine. He feels comfortable. You look at the art for it. There's like a future there where it's not as finite. I think that's kind of the purpose, the intent here behind it there. I think that I can understand why we might feel more positive about that. And again, I feel like there'll be an audience that can kind of relate to that. I think that the way that we sing within this is is uplifting and upbeat, and we bounce around and we have a nice sort of energy and rhythm cadence and sort of charisma to it. There's a kind of a breathiness there. Some of the falsetto parts that we have sound kind of like anthemic there, and I like how they kind of feed off of each other and correspond in those verse parts. And there's some parts where we get a bit more louder and vocal there, but I think they're just a little bit smoother than in previous outings. And we're quite comfortable within some of the slightly more sort of complicated and tricky harmonies that we have in different parts of the piece, you know, with the chords and extensions and sort of jazzy sort of bar chords and stuff like that, which is good, you know, it can be difficult to navigate those occasionally. But yeah, no, we're present regardless of what we're doing, and it's good. The track at 3 minutes 30 as well is a little bit shorter than the other two, and I just feel like, again, for the kind of structure we have with the verses and choruses and instrumental parts and the different bass lines and chord progressions we have, I just feel like that's time well spent. I don't think it needs to be a shorter track in order to be good. There's definitely merit to the previous two. It's just I think this one within the 2 to 4 minute sweet spot there, it's not overplaying a specific chord progression or line there, and we don't get too used to the vocals, the line or the meter or the kind of like purpose of that. I like the use of some sort of more conventional, unconventional bar chords on the guitar there. When they're present, they're very sort of fragrant there. It issues an emotional nuance there with some of those extensions there. Like it's not just a completely happy track. It kind of makes it sound sort of suave, cool. You know what I mean there? And there's a rhythm to the funkiness of those guitars that plays neatly with the on-off beat sort of like cymbals and kicks and snares with an overall chord note groove to it. I like the use of some pads or sort of electric keys as well to sort of flood the sides of the stereo field there, left and right sides of the cans in the mix with a really sort of bright tender texture there when they come in. And we're a bit brighter with some of the guitar takes and the hook there, just a little bit louder there. It could also be the backing vocals as well that coalesce with that, but it's just nice to have a bit of extra oomph there. And the bass is prominent as well there. It's very comfortable picking those notes there, comfortable sort of navigating the scales and modes associated with the piece there. And it's not just playing sort of root notes, it's also going, oh, can I go to the 5th? Can I go to the 3rd, etc.? How do I do linking notes? And I think also sort of taking away some of the melody or harmony with an interlude section of middle 8 there is just a nice way to go into it, back into it. It's just a mix-up of the halfway point of the track, doing the chorus one more time, having something more familiar, and then you're out. But yeah, there was a nice sort of gentle staircase across the board there, structurally, you know, compelling there. We don't have any other sort of like old leads, really. It's just mainly the vocals doing a lot of the coloration, but that's been the thing across both of these, in all 3 of these tracks so far. You know, that's totally fine. We don't need to overcomplicate it. Although, to be fair, like the bass, whenever you do hear an instrument, you nonetheless appreciate its presence within the song. For example, they all perform different patterns and sort of purposes, but they do nonetheless, they're all additive. We never give up on the adjustment of the vocal tails, and we just have a great sort of tight finish at the end, and we're done. Effectively, it's a big finish, you know. Thematically, it's minor leaning, but because of the extensions there, it's a bit less kind of like, it's more to sort of not be cheesy sounding. It's kind of like a minor 7-ish kind of, with some sort of parallel majors and minors and chromaticisms within the harmonies, just to sort of like insinuate that it's not necessarily as dark and dreary as it might be otherwise. Because I mean, considering the subject matter, why would that be? Why would that be? I mean, we're talking about our own mortality and sort of like how conditional that is, but it's not like where we're off to a worse place, if you know what I mean. Studio recording, mixing and mastering, I think generally, you know, it's tightly compressed there. The glowing limit, you know, the mixing is generally fine, leveling is good, and there's no resonant frequencies here. I just think generally this was a little bit sort of smoother there. It was kind of like breathy sounding, nice sort of push to the kicks on the quarters, nice and loud, bit of pumping, bass compression, limiting is handled, and we're going to talk about these 3 tracks more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of these 3 tracks from an act named Sunny Kingdom Music titled You Live in Me, I Can Do All Things, both those being the rock versions, and then Love That Never Ends. In this section, we're going to provide an overall analysis of these tracks and lyrics and vocals all the way through to studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But before we get any further, what do we think these tracks are about? Well, I mean, we've already spoken about them individually in their sort of like per track sort of mini analyses, but you know, with again, You Live in Me being like at least an acknowledgement of how we're like a vessel for the Holy Spirit there. I Can Do All Things being empowered by God to do them, and Love That Never Ends, as in God will always love us whether we're alive or whether in the afterlife, so to speak. These are things that, again, for people that are kind of like religiously affiliated with this, they're going to really kind of get behind it. But I also think it's just generally like, it's just nice to hear people talk about these sort of positive aspects, I suppose. You know, I think these are things that people clearly have interest in. It's good to discuss them. the vocals across the board, we have different singers, but typically they hit the notes they need to, whether it's sort of like diatonic or chromaticisms, notes outside, whether they're covering sort of like more traditional chords and set passages, or more sort of like predictable patterns, chord wise, or they're kind of going on a sort of a little bit of a journey there. There's nothing too spicy instrumentally or compositionally within these pieces. They're very sort of poppy for the most part, but ultimately, nonetheless, I think that we carry ourselves well. There's occasions such as in I Can Do All Things, we're kind of belt quite a lot. I kind of prefer the parts we don't necessarily belt, and we're more sort of breathy and sort of like moderated in terms of our approach and tone of things. But I do nonetheless appreciate that we're trying to insinuate a sense of adjustment of intensity of our vocal parts there, so that's fine. I think that for the most part, our expressions make sense and are not sort of like a detriment to the listening experience. I like that we have backing vocals as well as some sort of like mystier kind of surrounding parts, and there's choirs and I Can Do All Things and other parts to sort of like switch things up, as well as interesting use of falsetto and some elements. We typically feel comfortable in a hidden chest voice. These songs are structured in more sort of like contemporary fashions, where we have verses and choruses and some middle eights and interludes, as well as some instrumental intros and outros. I think that Love That Never Ends was a bit, it was more sort of like, it was 3.5 minutes. The others like 4 to 5 minutes. And I think for the most part, we managed to flesh them out quite neatly. We could potentially have had some old leads in certain elements there, but I think the focal point was the vocals, so that's absolutely fine. If you like hearing the story and listening along to it, you'll sort of appreciate that. And again, with pop music as it is, there's clearly an audience for that kind of thing. There were different instruments per track there, so I'm just going to talk about a few of my favorite parts and how they're incorporated. I think the drums for the most part were well fleshed out. We had a variety of different sort of acoustic kit parts with kicks and snares and cymbals being quite prominent there, with occasional tom transfers. If there were sort of tomish elements there, less sort of like acoustic, like analog stuff done, it's more about the sort of orchestral drums and the cinematic elements and the those kind of articulations and everything like that. We did have some tom fills in parts, and we had some flams and other bits of spice, but it was typically either beat or sort of like cinematic approach, and I think that that's totally fine. Some other times we didn't have drums we knew to step away from, and that was good. The bass lines for the most part were well behaved with the root notes. I did kind of appreciate and love That Never Ends that we kind of tried to do some different things and moved around the fretboard a bit more. I think that when we had the guitars such as You Live in Me, which are a bit heavier, I think that the power chord elements worked as a nice sort of antithesis to the picked cylinder parts there, as well as to the bar chords that we had within Love That Never Ends. I just think we had different guitar tones that typically suited the mood or type of music that they were doing there. We understood to incorporate those that way. I wish still kind of wish the guitars had been a bit wider and you're living with in terms of like distorted parts there, but it's just, it is what it is. And I just think, again, if we'd had a guitar solo or something along those lines, that might have, outside of some melodies or finger patterns, it might have been a little bit too sort of like, might have been like we were trying to sort of like get attention away from, what we were trying to accomplish, the vocal parts. So I think that's fine. The keys, whenever we had them, were relatively minimalist. We had sort of accents of sort of notes or octaves or fifths and stuff. When we had strings, they were typically held notes or some staccato parts there. We had some triplet movements, and I Can Do All Things, which is kind of neat there. It was cool to sort of have just the strings be the focal point there. That's the closest thing we had to an alt lead, I suppose. And again, we had like a mixture of percussive claps and other parts as well there to sort of switch things up with the flow of the rhythm and cadence. So yeah, we followed. We went alongside our quarters, eighths, triplets, and sixteenths. We adhered to the fundamentals there. And there was a perceived, like, dynamic range to it. Things weren't the same loudest compositionally all the time. It's just that with the production, they were. We had some other synth patterns. I think a couple of these tracks, if I'm not mistaken, started with like a synth pad to kind of see us into it, which is it's a common thing. It's an acceptable thing. And we had like electric keys as well. Love that. It flew around the side, some atmospheric elements as well, which was kind of good, as well as some other sort of industrial cinematic elements synth-wise there to sort of like bring other parts up. Ultimately, we had a good sort of like amount of different ingredients per song, but also was relatively minimalist in terms of how they were represented. It's more, we want to have all these sort of fun sounds, but we don't want to overcomplicate it for the audience. So I think just generally stuff fit together quite neatly. Thematically, most of these tracks, if I'm not mistaken, were in the minor, but they were done in ways where they weren't trying to be just completely, just bluntly minor. A good example of this was some of the nuance harmonically with the Love Never Ends track, when we had like the parallel majors and minors and everything like that. Another example with I Can Do All Things is was that we had kind of an uplifting sort of like progression there, even though we started with the minor. It's like we're in a dark place and we're going from there to something better. So that was cool. Like how we had the strings resonating with that minor, leading that minor note and that root note, and then we kind of, the chorus is more sort of bouncing around those sort of 4 patterns there that kind of make you feel a bit more emphatic about what you're able to do now. So I'm glad that it wasn't just stuff within the major and minor scales, and there was some chromatics and parallels and stuff like that. That was good. And again, to be fair, the vocals being the main focal point, we had a lot of different tails and fun sort of melodies and vibratos and different directions went in with that, so that's cool. Studio recording, mixing and mastering across the board, things are pretty well handled. I'm happy. Well, I mean, like, things could have been a bit wider, some of the vocal takes, some of the rhythm guitars, etc. And some of the belts were just a little bit too sort of like common for me. Maybe that could have been the compression as well, because it was glued from a production perspective. But you know, ultimately, you know, you could hear things clearly for the most part between the sides of the stereo field. There weren't that any sort of like resonant frequencies. Like occasionally had a bit of a high end kind of resonance, but that's okay. It was a sometimes thing. It was typically when we're being a bit more intense with the vocals in terms of the loudness of it, perceived loudness, or like the different layers, the amount of layers we had, such as at the end of I Can Do All Things there when we had the hold plus the another line, and then we had the choirs as well. Ultimately, yeah, it's a good experience with it for the most part. In terms of any applicable constructive critique, I mean, I've talked about then the width of the guitars and like the belt and stuff like that. So I feel like anything beyond this is simply going to be potentially superfluous. From a final general listener's perspective, I appreciate why people like this music, and as someone who is sort of like agnostic, it's interesting to hear different perspectives there. I think hearing kind of music like this like helps us learn more about other people. I'm glad I had the opportunity to check it out, and I wish everyone involved all the best in future with their musical endeavors. Because thank you for watching my review of this track from an act, or these 3 tracks should I say, from an act named Sunny Kingdom Music, titled You Live in Me, I Can Do All Things in Love That Never Ends. Hopefully you enjoyed them. If you did, please go show us some love via the various social medias and their SoundCloud pages. Stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists one in time, as they need the help more than ever through the crazy stuff going in the world. And I will catch you in the next Xperia X. Spiderhands out.